Hey everyone, welcome to the second episode of Krackle Comics Weekly, our new and our all new, all different show where we talk about new comic books, discuss and review them, and also other various segments. My name is Vincent.
I am Dan 2020.
I'm Mike.
I guess we're all 2020.
No.
No, I'm 24.
Sure.
So I think some of us have a haul.
It's true.
First.
Well, alphabetical. I'll go first. I got that Brian Michael Bendis Daredevil Omnibus Volume 1. So the empty shell that is my life is now partially complete because now I have all of Bendis, Brubaker, and Wade and Miller in Omnibus. So my Daredevil compulsion is like kind of set for now. I just got to pick up that stupid Bob Gale trade now.
Congratulations.
Are you gonna get Shadowland?
I might custom bind it because I own all the issues, and the way the omnibus goes, it has all the Shadowland issues and then all the Daredevil issues behind it. You're supposed to read them back to back, so I might just custom bind all that stuff.
But what about Miller?
What do you mean?
He has it.
Miller and Omnibus?
Yes.
What about the companion?
I don't need the companion.
Yes, you do.
It's got Born Again.
No, it's not. I don't need it because I prefer to have Born Again by itself, and I have a very nice hardcover version of Man Without Fear.
So I'm going to show off one book I picked up for a good deal from someone online. The Justice League International Omnibus.
You're right, I do have that book.
Big thick boy.
I have that book too.
And
Yeah,
I had to...
It's got that book with a fucked up cover.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Remember Dan's version of itself fucked up?
Mine is beat to shit.
And buying one of these, especially from someone else at this point, it's kind of a roll of the dice because I had to turn to this page and not show up well on camera, but had to verify that that second thought balloon from Guy Gardner has words in it. And I got lucky. He is thinking. But the thing is, there were multiple complaints when this came out. There were 2 pages out of order, the missing thought balloons, and DC fixed both of those with like a quick second run of the printing. And so I guess I got that one. I didn't triple check about the out of order pages and stuff, but I think they were fixed at the same time. But also 2 of the issues, and one of them happens to be that Guy Gardner one, were like fuzzy or something, and I think mine sort of looks fuzzy, but I think it's readable. So
what does that mean, fuzzy?
It's just like the reproduction's like not like 100% like sharp.
It looks like it's out of focus. It's the scan didn't go all the way through. I have the first printing of that book. Now I've talked with Vince about it. The missing thought balloon kind of makes it funnier.
Yeah.
Like it I'm not that mad about it because it kind of works.
Well, and what you can do, like if the misprint is like, okay, one dialogue balloon is messed up, or like just 2 pages are out of order, rather than something crazy about like, oh, the reproduction on tons of pages is terrible, or like straight up like half a page is missing or stuff like that. Like that's screwed up. But if it's these kinds of more minor things, it's still, in my opinion, unacceptable because cover price on this book, which I did not pay cover price, but cover price, it's actually only $99.99. I thought this was a...
Holy shit.
Really? I thought that was a $150.
Yeah, or at least the $125, which I think DC has a few of those. But this is a big one for 100 cover.
Infinite Crisis was a $125.
You sure it's not $150?
I think it was $150.
I can tell you next week because it's upstairs and I don't feel like running up and going to check.
Tune in next time. But even at 100, that it's $100 book, it's still unacceptable. But for those, I would recommend people just like slap a post-it note in there, or not a post-it note because you don't want to stick to it, but just put a little piece of paper with a note in it. And I also discovered some similar examples of that recently. There are 2 pages out of order in the Avengers Final Threat Epic Collection. And there's another one I discovered also in the Epic Collection line, but I already forget. So I'll see when I get to that.
See, that's weird because I read Final Threat Epic Collection and I never noticed it. Must be a dumbass.
I'll send you the note later.
Okay.
Pages in the wrong spots.
Vince, what's funny is you mentioning this book this week is that the new trade paperbacks, Volume 1 of JLI is out this week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was out on IST this week.
That's funny.
And as far as we know for the moment, the second omnibus is still coming.
Yeah, they say that, but
Yeah.
Canceled.
because DC collected editions are terrible.
Well, the other thing is, and I'd probably take JLI Volume 2 over this one, but they canceled Bronze Age Volume 3, I think. And so if they had not canceled that, then I could have had Justice League, an oversized hardcover from like 1960, I forget when it starts, through like 1990 or something, which would be really cool.
Because then you have both the Justice Superman in the Justice League and Wonder Woman in the Justice League, right?
Yeah. Well,
So that would take you all the way up to Morrison.
sort of. There's some.
You would need breakdowns.
Well, there's breakdowns which maybe in Volume 2. I mean, there's no official content listing for that yet, and also there's stuff after Wonder Woman and the Justice League. It's the Gerard Jones run.
Oh, that's not collected. That you'll have to custom buy that.
I probably won't. It's that weird run where it's still Wonder Woman leading the team, but it's like even more D-list characters on it. But I was just talking about even just oversized to the end of the Wahaha era to breakdowns basically. Would be nice, but whatever. Because of course I do have Detroit too. But that's enough of Paul. Dan, you don't have any books around, right?
No, not this week.
All right. Jumping right into our retro book, we had an interesting one. The dice came up on Captain America number 272. This is from the 80s. This is the creative team.
The people voted.
Well, yeah. The people rolled the dice and rigged the dice. We did it. We're doing polls now on Twitter. Go follow us on Twitter. Exact same username, twitter.com/cracklecomics. Pretty easy. And this is from the 80s. This is the creative team on this issue is J.M. DeMatteis and Mike Zeck. It's got a great cover by Mike Zeck. Very captivating, attention-grabbing cover with Captain America being assaulted by rats. And this creative team, like, kind of loosely started with 261. So they've been around here, but I think even still, they might not be like 100% the primary creative team. It's kind of a fill-in round robin. But the last major run before this was Roger Stern and John Byrne's criminally short run, which only ran 9 issues. And also, I want to point out that in the credits for this issue, you will see Mark Grunwald as the editor of Captain America at this time. And this is actually his first issue where he's promoted to the full editor on the series. And he's on this, Avengers, Iron Man, Thor, Spider-Woman, and What If. So he's basically the Marvel Universe, like the core Avengers line guy. And his assistant is Mike Carlin, who eventually will become a major editor in his own right. And so we open with Cap riding through the red light district on his motorcycle, which Cap often rides a motorcycle, but this specific one, he's just recently acquired. Someone gave it to him as a gift. And it's like an America-themed one. And he has this basically through like this part of the 80s through the 90s. And he comes across a taxi driver with a slit throat. So there's some stuff going on. But then this is this moment is basically my only criticism of this issue, personally, because he finds a taxi driver with a slit throat, and he's like, "All right, let me take this guy to the hospital on my motorcycle." And we don't see him like drop the guy off at the hospital, but he goes to the hospital, but then he's checking up on someone else, and we never come back to the slit throat taxi guy. So I feel like the transition is slightly weird because he's going to the same place, but then we drop that thread because now he's catching up with Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon. His nephew Jim has been shot by some gang members because he's like in a neighborhood watch kind of thing. And we also get some subplots here that Sam Wilson, some folks in his neighborhood, in like the school board or something, have remarked how he should run for Congress. And Sam points out in his narration that, yeah, Steve was pulled into a presidential campaign a dozen issues back and had no interest in it, so he backed out and stuff. But that's one of the Stern and Byrne issues. And eventually, this is far past this issue, but eventually I'll tell people that Sam Wilson does not become a congressman because a rival exposes his criminal history as Snap Wilson, his alter ego, when he was a teenager. And yeah, so then Falcon runs into some thugs. He takes them out, and we get some nice action from Red Wing as well in here. And he takes this kid who's kind of been confronted home to his single mother. And it turns out that this kid is the one who shot Sam's nephew Jim. So initially he freaks out and is like about to like strangle and like beat the shit out of this child in front of his single mother. And but then he catches himself. He's like, "What are you doing?" And now back to all the stuff that Cap's doing in this issue. It references issue 270 as just a few hours ago. So these couple issues are really tight in terms of how long they're taking place after each other. And Cap chases a mysterious figure up to a rooftop and is confronted by hundreds of rats that start jumping on him. And Vermin reveals himself. This is the first appearance of Vermin, who, I mean, obviously he's not like hyped up as a huge thing here, but he quickly becomes like a CD level villain, and he has a role in Kraven's Last Hunt, the famous Spider-Man story. And Cap pummels the shit out of Vermin after Vermin like bites him. I feel like they could have had a reference to rabies checks and stuff. So Cap is about to kill Vermin and catches himself as well. And that's basically the whole issue. And then just a few more continuity things, because that's like most of what interests me whenever we read these issues. Jim Wilson, the guy who was shot, I think they even say he took like 4 bullets or something. He eventually will die of AIDS in 1994 in Peter David's Hulk run toward the end. Because even though he's the Falcon's nephew, he's actually more of a Hulk supporting character and goes back to the 70s. Also, we get a one sentence reference to Cap's girlfriend at the time, Bernie Rosenthal, but she's not seen on the page throughout this issue. And she was introduced by Stern and Byrne, and she's through that run, this run, and the first couple issues of Grunwald before she's kind of moved out of the way so that he can build up a Diamondback relationship. But she'll occasionally come back, and I know Mike has recently read the Ed Brubaker run, and she has a brief, prominent appearance in that, defending Bucky for his like retroactive war crimes as the Winter Soldier.
Not only that, Vince, but Bernie Rosenthal has also shown up in Ta-Nehisi Coates' run as well.
Yep. And I know Coates, I think Coates is, I mean, he is a Cap fan, but also he's probably pulling from some of the Brubaker run, because that's the most famous stuff. And then honestly, based on Coates' age, like this era may have been like his prime reading. If he was a little younger, Grunwald, but I think he's actually old enough where he was probably reading DeMatteis and Zek, and maybe even starting around Stern and Byrne. And also referenced for like just his name off chance reference is Arnie Roth, who is one of Steve's other supporting characters in this era. and he's a childhood friend of Steve's who would stand up to bullies and protect him, kind of like how Bucky does in the movies. And they reconnect now, but of course, like all of Steve's friends, all of Steve's war buddies, he's older. And also, he is one of the first openly gay characters in Marvel. And he dies of cancer in Mark Gruenwald's final issue, which is kind of unfortunate. There's also a quick reference to another thing that we don't see, and that is Steve's day job as a commercial artist. And very early in Grunwald's run, Steve Rogers actually becomes the artist on the in-universe Captain America comic. Because if you know, within the Marvel Universe, Marvel Comics is an entity that publishes both the real and made-up adventures of the superheroes within New York. But unless they get specific, basically, I mean, if someone's public identity is public, then Marvel Comics probably handles with that. But the difference between in-universe Marvel and real-life Marvel is that for these characters with secret identities, I guess their comics are just kind of more boring because they're not going to have those scenes. And that applies to Steve. But then when I thought about that, something clicked in me. And I feel like the fact that Steve Rogers was once the artist on Captain America has to be ridiculously insane trivia within the Marvel Universe now, because in 2002, he revealed his identity to the public. That's in the John Reber and John Cassaday run, which is like the post 9/11 run. So within the Marvel Universe, it's like, holy shit, Captain America was drawing his own comic book, back in the day, which I feel like would be very strange. And the final thing I will say is that this issue will presumably be in the Captain America Epic Volume 10, following the Dawn's Early Light volume. And now I will finally hand it over to you guys.
So, I thought this was a really, really solid issue. It's always weird for me to go back and read older Captain America because I have to remember, oh, yeah, he has a secret identity. No one knows that Steve Rogers is Captain America. It's always the thing you have to wrap around. I want to focus on Mike Zeck's art a little bit because I pretty much agree with all the story beats Vince said, but Mike Zeck fastly becoming one of my favorite artists looking back in the kind of 1980s Marvel era. I see a lot of John Byrne in his art here, especially with the way he draws the suit. John Byrne, known for making Superman's costume kind of big and bold with the huge S he put on it. You look at Cap's costume here, there's the giant star on this one. Kind of in similar veins there. But a lot in the anatomy and the faces, I see John Byrne and Zeck's art here.
Yeah, I think Zeck is great. And I also feel like this run, DeMatteis and Zeck, I feel like it's relatively forgotten to modern readers. I feel like Cap is one of those books where there's a huge swath, after Stan Lee and before Grunwald, no one really talks. Well, after Englehart and before Grunwald,
people talk about Englehart.
Yeah, but between there's a huge gulf, except for those 9 John Byrne issues, and I feel like that's kind of not deserved because, and hopefully soon we will finally get all of this collected, because Mike Zeck, I mean, all respect to DeMatteis as well, who's still relatively early in his career, I think. But Zeck is great. My only nitpick on Zeck, and I think he kind of tones this down a little bit as it goes on, is that he has Steve with kind of a butt chin, and there's a few panels where it's very prominent. I'm I think that's kind of too much for me. My personal style guide.
I think it still works though. It's funny that we've had another Mike Zeck book because we just did a Spectacular Spider-Man issue that was drawn by Zeck, written by Peter David. That's back when we were still on the other channel. But it is crazy how good and solid he is across the board. Definitely fastly become one. In my head, when I think great Marvel artists and guys that are underrated and deserve more credit, Mike Zeck's up there now, especially.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice to see the team from Craven's Last Hunt doing Cap, and the way that it transitions to a different type of book. Just going back to what Vince said about the plot, I think it's funny how you have both Falcon and Cap off doing different things, and they both kind of come to that same realization at the end. Like close to, beating the shit out of whoever they're confronted by. I mean, I feel like Falcon's is a little bit more emotional than Cap's because he's just fighting a guy in a sewer, or wherever they're at, just fighting a bunch of rats. But yeah, no, this is definitely one of the more entertaining and solid retro books we've had in a while. And yeah, I really gotta get into reading some of that Cap stuff I already own in Epic format because I feel like I would really enjoy it. And yeah, I'm excited for when they announce this book in a collected edition. It's definitely coming, like you said. It's only a matter of time before it gets announced.
And I know not every issue is like this, obviously, but also, I mean, the synopsis made this obvious, but this issue gives a ton of attention to Falcon, and it really feels like a 50-50 book in this issue at least. And I mean, I like that. I like Sam Wilson, and I like paralleling him with Steve. All right, so that's that. I think it was a definite thumbs up from all of us. And now I will talk some more with our first new book this week, and this is a relatively light week. So
It was a very light week.
yeah, so there's our excuse for me going a little overboard on the retro book. We did have a whole thing.
I mean, you're going to talk about Aquaman here, then I'm going to talk about Buffy, and we know how fast I go through that. So we're on you a bone this week. We're giving you some history lessons, some Mike Zeck praise, because then Dan's going to talk about Iron Man 2020, and that's going to be a whole thing.
Right. So diving right into Aquaman, this is the guest creative team or fill in depending on what you think of that concept and also what you think of the issue. And this is Kyle Higgins and Aaron Lopresti filling in for the usual team of Kelly Sue DeConnick and Robson Rocha. And this is set, the majority of this issue is set years ago. And the only specific continuity references that's after the first arc of Rebirth Justice League, which also obviously makes it therefore around this first or second arc between them of Dan Abnett's Aquaman book. So again, I like how DeConnick and this issue, and also there was the annual, which I think Vita Ayala contributed to. Well, the current main run and the ancillary stuff, it's not shying away from diving into Abnett's run and even further back with obviously a lot of the Jeff Johns stuff, which technically started this continuity, which I like. Obviously, I'm a continuity nut, that kind of comic fan. But also, when I heard about the announcement of this run and also that it was coming off of it and an Amnesia thing and a crossover, I was worried that it was going to be way more of a clean slate. And so always happy to see that that's not the case. And this is actually, we're picking up with Aquaman and Mara, Arthur and Mara, inviting Batman and Wonder Woman to stop by Amnesty Bay. Actually, I think it says they invited the whole league, but only Bruce and Diana show up. And what they're doing is they're celebrating their engagement, which happened in the DC Rebirth one-shot, which still hasn't, they still haven't gotten married, even though Mara's pregnant right now. And someone, not Diana or Bruce, but a supporting character, minor character, brings up kids. And Mara kind of gets a little defensive for a second, which is understandable. I guess it depends on what kind of person you are and how old you are and how deep into your relationship you are. But the second you get engaged, someone's like, "Oh, you guys are gonna have tons of babies, right?" And then Arthur also jumps in, kind of to take the weight of that conversation off of Mara, but then also it's kind of implied that maybe he says certain things, not that she gets upset by them, but it makes her think, or she looks at him. And so then once their little bar party's over, they have a somewhat serious conversation about it, and their initial conclusion is that maybe they shouldn't bring kids into the world, given the fact that they're superheroes who defend the world every day and have all kinds of crazy shit, in addition to being monarchs and everything. but also if they're monarchs, they should probably have a kid. But basically, as soon as they like reach the end of that conversation, they have to run off to save an oil rig, which has been attacked by the Trench, which is a Jeff Johns creation from his very first arc. And if you've seen the Aquaman movie, the Trench play a very prominent role in there, and they're portrayed in that movie pretty accurately. So that's exactly what they are. And it turns out that there's a young female Trench being held captive for research and stuff on the oil rig. And Arthur in the Jeff Johns arc killed the queen of the Trench. And they have like a colony system and a matriarchy. So the queen is in control. So these Trench are now coming to rescue this new potential queen. And at first, they're attacking all these oil rig workers, and everything's crazy and scary because the Trench have lots of teeth. But Arthur frees the young queen, and then the Trench just kind of swim away. And there's like a weird moment where the queen like looks at Arthur, and it's almost like a cheesy moment where like they're smiling at each other. And along the way, while Arthur is figuring things out, Mera does a crazy feat of creating a ton of lifeboats out of hard water to save all the workers. But we don't actually get to see that at all, which was the only frustrating part of this issue for me. And then that's the end of the story. And then the final page, the caption says soon, and it's Mera hooked up to machines and in bed because she's probably going to have a baby in the next issue, Aqua Baby. And basically, this truly is a filler issue. Like, it's not in the current timeline. It doesn't really add anything whatsoever. But I liked seeing this version of the characters, which is a little closer to like my like headcanon style guide of them. Mostly just the fact that Arthur does not have long hair and tattoos. And I think Will Presti is a really solid, consistent artist on these kinds of house style main core DC books. He's had runs on Wonder Woman and other things. And there are two really beautiful splash pages in this issue. One of them is an action shot of like Arthur and Mera both posing together, and one is an emotional shot of them like embracing each other and looking at the sunrise. So even if, actually, matter of fact, the fact that it is a fill-in issue, if you have like a slight bit of interest in Aquaman, I think this is actually a great issue to pick up standalone. So doesn't move the story along really, but very enjoyable in my book.
Solid news. I've always been a Kyle Higgins fan from his time on New 52 Nightwing. Even though it's the red suit, I still thought it was a very solid run, and I like Gates of Gotham that he did with Snyder. And I've heard good things about his Power Rangers stuff, but I haven't really dug into it.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what he's up to at the moment because, as far as I know, he fully jumped off Power Rangers and he handed it over to Ryan Parrott, who's kind of like worked with him on some things in the past and was on the spinoff title for a while. And it's not like he has anything regular from Marvel or DC, to my knowledge.
He wrapped up that 5-issue Winter Soldier miniseries that I reviewed. Back way like when we started doing the show back almost a year ago now, and that was pretty good. But yeah, Kyle Higgins has always kind of been a fan favorite for me. But jumping into Buffy and Angel Hellmouth number 4, which is by Jordi Belair and Jeremy Lambert, Eleonora Carlini on art. So still back in hell, Buffy and Angel plan to confront the Hellmother, but Buffy wants nothing to do with Angel now since she found out, oh, he's a vampire in the last issue, and I don't trust vampires and people that lie to me. So she leaves Angel and Drusilla behind, and Angel and Drusilla are kind of just left standing there on a cliff in hell as the Hellmother is rising out of the ground, and then ends up corrupting Angel because the whole plan, remember, back in Sunnydale, where she wants to corrupt all the men of Sunnydale. So Angel is going to be corrupted as well. And back to Buffy, she's kind of facing off with a version of herself, again, who's lost trying to save Sunnydale by herself because she keeps running off instead of accepting the help. She needs to kind of learn that she doesn't have to do everything on her own, and she'll fail if she tries to do it that way. But as she faces that kind of future version of herself, the now corrupted Angel is now facing her. So They're gonna fight in the next issue. This is 6 issues. This is issue number 4. It's still good. I think this is the best out of the Buffy books right now, just because it has our core characters in there, while the Angel and Buffy books don't have the core character, like the core title character. They're in this book, so I still think this is good, but it's paced a little bad. But
So is this whole thing going to be like 16 fucking issues or something?
yeah, I think so. It's huge. It's a very big loaded crossover.
Do you remember off the top of your head? Do you know what issue Buffy's up to?
I want to say like maybe early teens or like preteens.
Okay, because then maybe they could do like they might have it similar to Power Rangers, where it's like there will be one Buffy hardcover, and then there will be the Hellmouth hardcover, and then stuff like that.
I think that's the plan. There's already 2 trades of Buffy out now, I think.
Yeah, Boom's been kind of getting in the oversized hardcover game, similar to the way IDW does things.
They look nice. Those Boom Power Rangers hardcovers look great.
Now into the former license holder of Buffy.
Yes.
Got a Hellboy, essentially a holiday issue, a winter special. And there are 3 stories in here, 3 hosts, so we're going to split it up. And story number 1.
I'll take story number 1, which is the one with Hellboy in it, and it's by Mike Mignola. And it involves Hellboy. It's in 1989. So, if remembering Hellboy canon, I think he's gone from the BRPD at this point. And he's just kind of on his own as a kind of a private investigator that for the paranormal. And he's just chilling in this bar in Budapest. Is this guy's just in a bar? They're with 2 buddies. One's a professor, another guy just from the street, kind of just sharing stories. And this dude had a run-in with a demon who gave him a coin for helping him, and then keeps haunting him. And he keeps trying to get rid of this cursed coin, and he can't get rid of it. So Hellboy's like, all right, maybe we should just go confront this demon. And they do. And it ends up they get sucked into a different kind of hell dimension where it's very reminiscent of the cabinet of Dr. Caligari in the way the architecture starts to look, with the kind of the twisted and bent buildings and everything. It looked brilliant. And it just turns out that the guy, he gave it to him for saving him. And he's like, I don't need it. Thank you. I wanted you to keep it. And he just gives it back to him. And that's kind of the end of it. But so Hellboy's just like, that's weird. That's it. And but it turns out the professor was left in there, so it was like, ooh, kind of a dun 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 kind of thing. But I don't know if we'll ever see that character again. But I thought it was pretty fun as a way of subverting your expectations. I thought Hellboy was going to fight a giant monster. No, just gotta give him this coin here and say thank you and be on your merry way.
Yeah, I enjoyed this first story. I mean, it makes sense because it's the one with Hellboy, but to me, it was the standout. But also, at the end, I was like, if anyone gets trapped there and would be able to get back, it's this guy, because he still has that book in his hand, so he knows like when this thing shifts in and out, and he has the map. So like, I feel like he can probably get his way back. Dan, any thoughts on that issue?
Well, I will come out and say this is my very first Hellboy issue that I've ever read in my entire life. So,
have you seen the movies?
No. So,
okay.
This is my very first exposure to him in any context, and I don't know, pretty cool story. I like the art.
So Dan, his giant kind of rocky right hand. It's the right hand of doom, and it's the key to the destruction of the entire world.
All right, sounds good.
All right, so the second story is me, right?
Yes.
I thought I was gonna go over it.
Okay, then you go over it. Yeah,
that's what I rehearsed in my head. So this one has a bunch of people. I think it's like 1924 or something in upstate New York. They're in a cabin, and somebody's, I think his name is Calvin Durant, has been murdered by this monster that everyone's calling the Boogam. I think is how you pronounce it. Boogam. Not really sure how you pronounce it. And they're trying to piece together, how he got murdered, all this stuff. And this woman is questioning his brother, who's in the room with them, and eventually comes out that he is the one who killed his brother because his brother was trying to take half of his business. And basically the group kind of feeds this guy out to the wild to get eaten by the actual monster, the Bugin, who looks like a human with like no skin, like blood, like it like looks like the flesh has been taken off of them, and then like they have like a I don't know what type of fossil head that is, but it's a really strange looking monster. And yeah, and then at the end they kind of ask like why, like the one girl that was doing the investigation, they kind of ask her like how does she know that it was him, and she was like, well, the body was found in the morning. Obviously the Boogam only comes out at night to feast, so there's no way that the Boogam would have had the body left over in the morning for him. So she knew that it wasn't the monster that killed the brother. A little bit of a murder mystery type of thing. Thought it was interesting. Don't really know how it applies to Hellboy, but I thought it was fun. That's all I got.
Well, yeah. Well, the franchise in general just kind of deals with monsters and demons and stuff like that, and it's a lot wider than Hellboy in general.
It's very grim fairy tale esque.
Okay.
I mean, he's ultimately it's a shared universe, and he's just like the Spider-Man or Superman of the universe, but also is like way more prominent than the other characters. But I think besides the first one, the rest of these stories I think are just kind of anthology things. They're not supposed to be connected to anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the second one it was all right. Like it's a morality play kind of thing, and it was fine. It's kind of predictable.
It was predictable but good. I think the art was really good in that
Yeah.
one. I think my favorite art in the issue was the third and final story though.
And on that note, third story by Scott Alley and Andrew Moody. Also, so Chris Roberson and Scott Alley, like they do a ton of writing in the Hellboy universe. Now, Lila Del Duca and Andrew Moody and Mark Laszlo, I'm not super familiar with any of these artists, but I'm sure most of them have probably worked on something Hellboy related before. This story is in the 1400s, and there's a priest, and he's writing a journal as he's dying. So actually, I guess the majority of the story is actually before this, probably even in the tail end of the 1300s. And he's a witch hunting priest, witch more generally, like he hunts supernatural things that he believes are connected to the devil and evil and things like that. And he goes out on a hunting trip with his fellow dudes, and they come across a werewolf baby. And I'm 99.9% sure that the implication is they let the baby live because it's a baby, because they don't have bloody axes or anything like that. That's my interpretation. I'm assuming you guys thought the same thing.
I liked this one too. I don't think there's a story I didn't like in this series. Once again, kind of very predictable, seeing what was going to happen. I just thought the art was the best out of the three here.
Well, what I was thinking, because this could have taken a way darker turn in the final panel, they could have had blood dripping from their axes, and that would be a very different story with just that slight change. Not a huge difference, but overall, it was a fun little snapshot into the Hellboy universe. I don't expect that any of us are going to start reading Hellboy universe books with regularity anytime soon, just because there's some built-up continuity, and with these kind of smaller shared universes, it can be a little, ironically, it's more daunting to jump in blind than, say, picking up a random issue of Spider-Man. Even though Spider-Man has so much more history, the fact that it's more history means that it's less important. So that's that, but it was enjoyable, and maybe we'll read these every year. Now there's this.
We'll see. All right, so jumping into Iron Man 2020 #1. Iron Man 2020 officially begins, guys, and what a way to jump into a whole new Iron Man centric event. At least that's how I interpret it. I mean, there's a bunch of different series that are going to run alongside this book, so I'm assuming that means it's kind of like an event. So we'll see. The status quo of at this point is that Tony was revealed to be an AI the entire time in Dan Slott's earlier run, and Arno Stark and Sunset Bane have basically, because of this revolution, this reveal to the public of Tony Stark, have basically taken over Stark Unlimited. They have merged Stark Unlimited and Banetronics together to prepare for a force that is coming to Earth, and Arno is basically going around recruiting robots to help fight against this threat that's coming. We don't really get a very clear, showing of who that is, but we get a first appearance of the Iron Man 2020 armor, which really looks good, I think, in this book. Comparing it to the source material, we get those nice, big gear-shaped shoulder blades that the Iron Man 2020 armor is known for, and we get some pretty cool scenes with Arno kind of breaking up some robot revolts in the city. Different things going on, and then we get a little bit of backstory with Machine Man, obviously spilling over from the previous Dan Slott run. We get some motivations for him. He's kind of heading up this whole robot revolution, and the whole motivation for him is to get Jocasta back, who I believe is being used at Stark Unlimited by Sunset Bane. Sunset Bane being in this whole storyline, I think, is awesome. She's a really complex character that I think we got to know a lot more about in Kurt Busiek's run back in the early 2000s. But the last scene we pretty much get is Machine Man attacking a hospital, comparing destroying babies to destroying newer models of robots that the humans have been doing recently. So he's like, if you're going to kill newer versions of our robots, I'm going to kill a new model of your human race, which are babies, obviously. So I thought that was a little weird comparison there. And yeah, I mean, this issue works for me because, and obviously Mike is just waiting to disagree with me on this, but I think this issue works for me because, we get past all the bullshit from the last Iron Man book. We establish the status quo. Tony's out of the picture. We're focused on Arno Stark and Machine Man at this point. We know their motivations. We know what's going on. And, that's half the battle for me, I guess, when I'm reading a comic book. And we get some good scenes where both characters kind of get to show what motivates them and the actions they take because of it. And one thing I will add is that this series does remind me a lot of the Machine Man miniseries that came out in the 1980s, which also featured Iron Man 2020 as well. And it had a very similar theme. I can't remember it exactly, but I know like Machine Man was the protagonist and like Iron Man 2020 had more of an antagonistic role in it. And I'm starting to get that feel of it here. Arno Stark doesn't really come across to me as like the antagonist or as the protagonist in this story. It seems more like Machine Man is shaping up to be like that, but his means of, getting what he wants is a little bit terroristic. So I'm excited. I think this is going to be a really cool and interesting arc. Hopefully it doesn't nosedive after this first issue, so we'll see. But Mike, do you want to chime in here?
Whatever makes you sleep at night.
Well, let me just ask you this: is it as bad as the Have you read any of the Dan Slott stuff before this or no?
I read that first issue back when we did the fresh start reviews. I didn't like that. I didn't like that then.
So
I don't like it now.
Which is worse?
They're like even.
Fair enough.
They're even for different reasons.
Yeah.
I don't like that we, for some reason, that after Matt Fraction, well, really after Kieran Gillen, no one has had anything interesting to do with Tony Stark since then. So they decided to just destroy him again in Civil War II, which also a character assassination for Captain Marvel. So you had that whole event you had to go through that was bullshit. And then you brought him back as this weird, stupid AI. And then you didn't know what to do with him again. And then you bring Riri in. And then you have 2 books. And you don't know who to put in the forefront. So you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. And then you kill Tony again. Because this AI Tony. And then replace him with Arno Stark. And it's weird because I actually like the secret origin of Tony Stark that Kieran Gillen wrote. I like that story.
Yeah.
Whether or not I truly like the fact that he's adopted. I don't like that part, but I thought the story was good. So here, it's like, I don't like Arno. I do not like that Iron Man 2020 armor. And I think the part of it is that Pete Woods' art here is really inconsistent. The gears are consistently changing shape and size in any panel that make it hard to have any kind of continuity between the pages, which I know Iron Man is probably a bitch of a book to draw, which is why we keep constantly streamlining the armor to basically to the point where it's the movie armor now at this point. But like, you should be able to draw the armor where it looks the same across the rest of the book.
Mm.
If Salvador Larroca could do it for like how many issues with Matt Fraction, Pete Woods, you can do it too. So, and it's like that. Like I'm not really. I don't love the Robot Revolution thing. I think it's honestly pretty stupid. And you call this an event. I don't know if to call this an event or like a weird status quo change that they're trying to draw attention to. Marvel, the direction of Marvel right now seems that they have a bunch of sub-events going on. Because we have Empire coming, we have the I feel like the X-Men is a status quo kind of an event in itself. Then you have this, and then Venom and Carnage had their thing with Absolute Carnage, and now we keep alluding to the destruction of the universe. We had that with Secret History of the Marvel Universe. We've seen this being alluded to in Hulk, a little bit in Fantastic Four, and now here. So I think we're building up to some type of big Secret Wars-esque event again throughout all the books, which is kind of neat, but I don't care. So, yeah, I can't latch on to the character because I want someone to write Iron Man, not placeholder character A, B, C, or D.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And combining that with the fact that I did not like Dan Slott's beginning stuff from when I read that, I'm not the biggest Dan Slott fan. Yeah, probably wasn't going to read this. Only reason why I read this week was someone else could also talk about the book. I'm not continuing on with this. It was a light week, and I was looking for something else to read. Yeah. So, but if you enjoy it, being a big Iron Man fan, I'm not going to shit on you for enjoying it. Enjoy what you like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those books where you just read it to see how it goes, and it's obviously not classic stuff, but at this point, it's really the only stuff that I can read that's Iron Man related right now. So we'll see.
I was going to say, does Riri even still have a book right now?
She does. I mean, in the checklist, one of the books is Ironheart 2020.
Okay.
So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Oh, all right.
Well, I mean, they canceled Ironheart just like how they canceled Iron Man.
Okay.
And so after this is done, who knows what they'll do with Riri? I mean, she's still in Champions, but they'll probably do another relaunch for her.
Their thing where they're going through Outlawed. So
yeah. I also want to point out, I didn't read this, I have zero interest, but Marvel tried to hide for some reason one of the tie-in miniseries, and it ended up being I, Wolverine, which they like. I don't think they actually got around to like officially pushing it, So as far as I know, it kind of just got like revealed when people actually picked up the issue and saw the final checklist. And I Wolverine stars. Well, I presume it stars, and you guys can tell me if he's in this first issue. I presume it stars the robot Wolverine clone Albert from the Hama and Silvestri run.
I did not see that here.
Yeah, I can't remember, but
I saw Machine Man.
I shouldn't say this. I might read I Wolverine because it's an X-Men book, right?
No, it's not.
read it.
Maybe Albert tries to show up to Krakoa and he can't because he's not a mutant. All right, that's, and I'm assuming at some point there will be like, once past this first issue, they'll start having like 3 Iron Man 2020 books out every week. So we will see how many tie-ins Dan reads.
Yeah, well, you guys will get all the live coverage. Our audience will get live coverage of this event every week on Krackle Comics.
Oh, geez, between the X-Men books and this, oh, Jesus.
That's January.
We're providing a valuable service.
Well, there's the thing. If you listen to the audio version of the show, you get the previously on X-Men soundbite when I get to the X-Men corner. I don't have a soundbite for Iron Man.
Dude, you could pull like the clinking sounds from the beginning of the animated show.
You can use the 60s theme. I might just use that.
No, yeah, I say before the Iron Man stuff, we played the Iron Man 1960s theme.
I'll play this. I'll play probably the end of it.
That'll be awesome.
But the question: Deaths of Vic Sage #2, Jeff Lemire, Dennis Cohen, and Bill Sienkiewicz. And I'm going to say right now, didn't love the first issue. 100% rebound here. I loved this. So happy that this is kind of back on track for what I was looking for out of this book. So last issue ended with Vic Sage going to the Old West. So we're in Hub County in the 1800s for this, as Charles Victor Sage is searching to know kind of what is the evil that lurks inside people, and he's kind of feeling guilt because it's implied and we shown in flashbacks briefly that he was part of the union that was slaughtering the Comanche tribe kind of outside Hub County, and he feels guilt for that. But he knows evil is real because it also lives inside him. So it's kind of playing with those ideas a little bit from the Dennis O'Neil run, which I liked here. This felt like a very kind of Dennis O'Neil issue, which I liked a lot too. He encounters and saves a black man in Hub County who's framed for murder, and the town's rampant with racism. They wouldn't sell him things from the store earlier. He was looking for an axe because he was a farmer, and later the murder he's framed for is someone get chopped up with an axe. So they blame it on him and want to hang him. So what happens is Vic Sage ends up saving him and his wife as they kind of go on the run, but the mob goes after them that's charging out of the city and kills the man and his wife. But the question is saved by a Comanche Indian woman who has like a scar over her eye. It kind of looked like this Vic Sage's version of like a Richard Dragon almost. That's kind of what I took away from it. I could be totally wrong. I'm going to have to reread all of these when it's out to fully get the full picture of this. But she kind of sends him on a journey to encounter the evil that lurks in this town, as it's the priest that's kind of all behind all the hatred. And they're calling this like the man of 1,000 faces, which it's alluded to be the devil, which is very much in line with the Dennis O'Neil run. The main bad guy was, for a while, for the whole like first arc or two, is a priest. So everything kind of lines up there in a very weird way. So he goes back into the town with like with the mask, so he looks like the Question now. He has the mask at the beginning, and he looks awesome. It's just the Question, but in a cowboy outfit, and it totally works. And I gotta say, the Dennis Cohen art and the Bill Sienkiewicz inks on this, absolutely fantastic stuff with the black label here, with the bigger and wider pages. They look brilliant. And he just goes into this town and just starts shooting up the place that's like full of all these evil kind of corrupted people. And he comes face to face with the priest who's posing as the man in a ditch to kind of lure the Question in there. And he gets the upper hand on him, and he loses, and he dies again because the whole point of this series is the Question keeps dying and waking up at a different time. So the next place he's going to, and I'm very excited for, is Hub City in 1941, and we're going total pulp detective for it, pulp detective stuff here. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Very, very good issue. Strong rebound after I didn't fully love issue 1. Totally loved this. Really, really, really good stuff here.
Cool beans.
And our last book of the week, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, number 7, Matt Fraction, Steve Lieber. So more zany hijinks with Jimmy Olsen, but this time it takes a back seat to the events going on in his book and takes the downtime to kind of explain who Jimmy is. We get a lot of deep cut personality stuff into Jimmy Olsen here. We get Steve Lieber doing great homages to Charles Schultz and Peanuts with the little Olsen segments, which I thought were just adorable and brilliant. Kind of showing the different aspects of Jimmy's personality, but in a childlike, wondrous way, and it totally works for this character. We get flashbacks to see how he got his job at the Planet, exposing a corrupted official in his job interview with Perry White. I thought that was brilliant, showing that because of his connections with his family, he was able to get into places that other people aren't able to get into. We get another great Lex Luthor moment with kind of the histories of the Olsens and Luthers. And we get another illusions of we cut back a little bit to what's happening. It looks like all the stuff in Gotham City is wrapped up. Jimmy's with his sister, and she's taking him to hide out in a different city. And we end with a great gag in Opal City where everyone's dressed like Jimmy Olsen, because I'm taking it because from the Starman run, which Opal City's famous for under James Robinson, it was always kind of like a hipster city. So that's what it would have been in the 90s and early 2000s. So now it's just like a more tech hippie kind of startup city. So that's why everyone's dressed in the sweater vests looking like Jimmy Olsen. And he just gets out of the car and he's like, nope, I cannot live here, which I thought was really, really funny. Vince, I don't know if you read this or not, but I was kind of wondering what you thought of that, because I thought it was kind of funny and brilliant. But I like this issue. It was much nicer to just kind of delve into who Jimmy is and kind of blending or melding all of the different aspects of that character and how it's kind of transformed over the years into one. I prefer this to the last couple of issues.
Yeah, I did read this. I've kind of been jumping in and out, and I was happy that I did read this in this light week. The psychotherapy sequence in the beginning, there was also an homage there where there was it was drawn kind of a Tintin style and Hergé style for one panel. And yeah, I thought the Charles Schultz, the Peanuts pages were amazing, and was surprised to see that it extended beyond one page. They kept coming back to that, and it was integrated well. It wasn't just hanging on the fact that it's an homage. And then there's the Detective Jim Corrigan, which is a joke because he's like, no, not that one.
That I thought that was funny too.
And there's also a Philadelphia joke, which I enjoyed. And I thought the job interview was really, really clever. I don't think I really fully like the idea that Jimmy Olsen is this mega bit from this old money family and grew up rich and has multiple siblings, and I'm kind of iffy on that whole backstory. But given that, and even you could pull off a lot of this interview even without that part. This interview sequence, I think captures kind of Jimmy Olsen perfectly. What he brings to the table as a photojournalist, what he brings to the table at the Daily Planet, beyond being, the coffee boy, which is what he may have been, in 1950.
Which the best part of that sequence I felt was Lois Lane behind, also in the interview the whole time, kind of her eyes getting wider, seeing the essential skill set that Jimmy would have to complement her reporting skills.
Yeah. But also, it's kind of dumb where he's like, yeah, I don't need a salary. I'll just work for free.
Well, no, he said he'll work. He doesn't need to be on salary. He'll take paycheck to paycheck based on assignment.
And then yeah, I thought like as soon as I saw the words like Opal City, I was like slightly annoyed, but really not annoyed. Like I don't actually mind at all when characters go to Opal City. I just don't want to see Jack Knight pulled in.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was like, I hope. I was worried when I saw it, and I was like, oh, I really hope Fraction does not make a joke out of Jack Knight.
Because like Hawkman used in a recent arc, the last arc that I read before it went into Year of the Villain bullshittery, Hawkman went over, had a detour in Opal City, and hung out with the Shade, and I thought it was executed really well and respectfully. And I thought the same here. Like it plays into a joke, and it handled it pretty much perfectly. And it's funny because back then James Robinson and the whole antique shop and everything like that, Opal City was like hipster town, but that was like late '90s grunge hipster town, and now it's like it's believable that in 2020 Opal City is suddenly like Zoomer hipsterville.
Yeah, it completely works and it's genius.
Yeah, I mean it's basically Portland or along those lines. And I love how he bails because he doesn't. But the thing is, he's trying to hide, so like he should have just stayed there.
Part of it was like everyone's dressed as you. It's gonna be hard to find who you are.
But yeah, I really like this issue, and again, like some issues have been spotty, but once this is all together and all done, definitely a highlight for me. And since it's less connected to some of the ongoing stuff and a little bit more consistent, this and I guess Dial H. That's right now. That's my Bendis zone pickups long term from this continuity.
Your Bendis zone pickup that's not written by Bendis.
Yeah, exactly. I've tentatively decided no on the main Superman books and probably the Supergirl book from Andreyko and McGuire, and probably Lois Lane at this point. So it's this and Dial H. And no Young Justice, no Legion. All right. That's every book we were talking about this week.
It's weird not to have like 5 more to go.
We still went an hour because we had early segments.
Yeah, well, that'll get cut. So it'll probably end. The final show will end up being probably 55 minutes or something like that.
Okay, so our retro book for next week, it will be a July 1988 book from Marvel.
Okay.
So head over to our Twitter account shortly, and you can vote in the poll and see what we read next week.
But picks of the week.
Oh yes, picks of the week. Mine. I'm gonna go with Aquaman.
All right. I'm gonna go with Question.
And I guess I'm going to go with Iron Man 2020 since I didn't really read much.
I mean, you only had you can't that's the other. By the way, that's our other rule. You cannot choose the retro book as your pick of the week. It has to be a weekly release.
But the retro book was really good this week.
It was really good.
That's a bummer.
There have been some times where I was like, I would pick the retro book, but it's not the rules. But yeah, I mean, we all had a different book, but I also think all of our picks were things that we like. That was more of a niche thing for us this week. So,
all right, and with that, thanks for watching, and tune in for next episode. Adios.